Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to day 28 and final day of albums that are 40 years old in 2025. It's our last day looking back at 1985. Our final day, our 28th pick. Albums released in 1985 celebrating their 40th birthdays and anniversaries this year. We've picked out our favorites. Today is the final one. It's been a good month. A lot of good releases to talk about. A lot of good albums to revisit. Love when that happens. So for today, this is the second studio album from this American band, released in October 1985, recorded at El Dorado Studios in Burbank, California, produced by Brian Slagle and the band for Metal Blade Records. I'm talking about this second album from Omen, Warning of Danger. Got that Cobra on the front. Of course, if you've been following the channel in recent weeks, you saw that Rich Catino, John Gaffney, and I ranked the albums of Omen just a couple of weeks ago. Really good episode. A lot of people seem to dig that. This is a band well remembered by a lot of people who were metalheads back in the 80s. Very good, kind of more of an underground band, but a band that has a handful of albums that are really still very well beloved and respected when it comes to American metal, classic metal, right? Traditional metal, that sort of thing. In the band at the time, the classic lineup of the group: J.D. Kimball, the late J.D. Kimball on vocals, Kenny Powell, the great Kenny Powell on guitars, Steve Wittig on drums, and Jody Henry, on bass for this particular album. So what do we have on this great record, which is my favorite Omen album? Warning of Danger, the title track, kicks it off. Just killer. So many great riffs on this album. So many great riffs, and JD's vocals, I think, are very, very unique. He's got a melodic style, but he's a little kind of rough, right? But it works with the style of music that these guys play. March On, terrific track. Ruby Eyes of the Serpent, one of my favorite songs on the album. Just so killer. So many great riffs on here, like I said, and some really tasty leads. I mean, Kenny is a really, really good guitar player. I've always, they've got some albums that don't really kind of connect with me all that much, and some that I absolutely love. Throughout, regardless, his guitar playing is always stellar. There's always great riffs, always tasty solos. It's just classic metal. I don't know any other way to put it. This is just like a staple of this style of metal in the 80s from the US it's not glam metal, it's not thrash metal, it's just good old-fashioned metal. Don't Fear the Night, good catchy track on that one. You got VPB, which is a very cool instrumental. These guys did pretty cool instrumentals back in the day on the early records. Premonition, then Termination, really, really good. Make Me Your King, great song. And then the last two tracks, you've got Red Horizon and Hell's Gate. Both are killer. Hell's Gate, great way to kind of end off the album. It's moody, it's heavy, just really, really good. Just such a killer track. And then if you get various reissues of these albums, will tack on the Nightmares EP on the end of it. Mine doesn't have that. I believe the next album is what has the Nightmares EP on the CD issue. So it's like they always wanted to include the Nightmare EP on a reissue, right? So if you, depending on which version of these you've bought, this is the Metal Blade in conjunction with Pacheco Records reissue from 2012. This does not have the EP, but I've got the next album has the EP tacked onto the end of it. But there's versions. 1989 put the CD version, put the Nightmares EP on there. So there you get a cover of Whole Lotta Rosie and a couple other tracks as well, Dragon's Breath and so on. So that's my pick for today. Really, really great album. Don't sleep on Omen. If you're just a good old school metal fan, you never listened to Omen, definitely check these guys out. Well worth investigating. Really, really good stuff. So let's move on to honorable mentions, shall we? Sure. Pete, we shall. So these are the ones that albums I really like a lot, but didn't quite make the cut of 28. Hair's doing all sorts of crazy things this morning. There we go. And a lot of good ones here. Many of these I really kind of, a lot of angst with figuring out which ones make the grade. There's only 28, right? I was hoping if I had 3 more, I probably would have been a little happier. But there's some really great albums here. Can't all make the cut, right? But they make the honorable mentions, so that means I like them quite a bit. All right, this one kind of was on my original list and kind of came off because I was like, you know what? I I don't really love the whole album. I do like songs on it, but I think it's got to be on there because it's Ronnie James Dio. Dio's Sacred Heart album. It's not one of my favorite Dio albums. I like it enough, though. And, you know, it's one of those albums where there's like 3 or 4 songs I really dig a lot. The rest of it, I'm kind of like, but it's Dio. It's got to be on this list. AC/DC, Fly on the Wall. That was also original on my list. I think it's a pretty good album from AC/DC, right? Maybe not top 28 for me. Really good album. Saxon, Innocence is No Excuse. I always like this record. You know, it's got Broken Heroes on it. Love that song. That also was on my list. There were a lot of comings and goings throughout the month on my list where I just kept changing my mind about stuff. Another one that was also on my original list, Heart, self-titled. I know some people are down on it because it's very commercial, a lot of outside writers, but man, some monster hits on it. And it's a really good sounding record. It's kind of slick, but man, Ann is singing up a storm on it. I really like it a lot. I don't really, the 80s era of Heart, I prefer the 70s, but I don't really come down on the 80s era all that much. I've grown to really appreciate a lot of it. Really good. Phil Collins, No Jacket Required. I think it's one of his better solo albums. By the way, we are going to do a Phil Collins ranking the album show in the not too distant future for a solo album, so stay tuned for that. Alcatraz, Disturbing the Peace. Good, solid record. Yngwie's out, Steve Vai is in. I like it. Very different than the first album, right? No Pro from Rock and Roll and Disturbing the Peace. Very, very different from each other, but really, really good. Santana, Beyond Appearances. Solid 80s album from them. Another one that was just on the periphery of my top 28. Like I said, if we had 31 days, might have made it. Tom Petty, Southern Accents. Very solid record from him. Prince, Around the World in a Day. I know we have some Prince haters who watch the channel, but I don't mind a good chunk of Prince. That's a fun album. I really dig that a lot. Another one that just missed out, Brother, Where You Bound, by Supertramp. I like that album. It's kind of jazzy. It's really good. It's a little different from them, but I like it. Here's kind of a classic for a lot of people. I have talked many times about Stryper and their 80s material. Well, Soldiers Under Command is probably my favorite 80s record. But I find when I want to listen to Stryper, I listen to the more recent stuff. I like heavier, more serious, and darker Stryper than I do very happy, upbeat, preachy Stryper from the 80s. Guitar playing is amazing, vocals are amazing, but I find I don't listen to the 80s stuff all that much. I prefer the more recent stuff. Brother in Arms from Dire Straits. Really good album, actually. Robert Plant, Shaken and Stirred. Joe Walsh, The Confessor. Bathory, The Return. Got to have some Bathory on here. Warlock, Hellbound. Those early Warlock albums were really, really fun. It's too bad it didn't last a little longer. But honestly, I probably prefer the Warlock material to Doro's solo stuff, but that's just me. Grim Reaper, Fear No Evil. Classic. Tangerine Dream, Le Parc. There's a lot of good Tangerine Dream albums from the 70s and 80s, right? Cheap Trick, Standing on the Edge. Miles Davis, You're Under Arrest. Very cool, accessible 80s album from Miles, where all of a sudden he discovered that, hey, I can play pop with a little jazzy gloss underneath, right? Kiss, Asylum, solid record from them. Another one that was in my original list, probably, wish I could have fit it in, but Stevie Ray Vaughan, Soul to Soul. It's my least favorite of the 3 original albums, but I still think it's really, really good. Vandenberg, Alibi. All those early Vandenberg albums are really good. Roger Daltrey, Under a Raging Moon, might be my favorite solo record from Roger. The Cult, Love. I'm not as much in love with Love as a lot of people are. I like the stuff that came afterwards more, but it's still a really solid record. Band I don't talk about often, Wasp, The Last Command. It's a pretty solid album. I was into it a lot back in the day. Those first couple of Wasp albums I can deal with fine. ZZ Top, Afterburner. I have my issues with it, but it's got some good tracks. Pat Benatar, Seven the Hard Way. Good album from Pat. Fate's Warning, The Spectre Within. That also just missed my list. I like The Spectre Within. To me, that version of the band really hit their stride with Awaken the Guardian, which came next. But I do like a good chunk of Spectre Within quite a bit. That just misses. Like I said, if we had more space, a couple more days, might have fit that one in. Aerosmith, Done with Mirrors. Pretty solid record from them. UFO, Misdemeanor. A lot of people shit on that album. I did back in the day too, but I've grown to kind of like it. It's very commercial, very keyboard heavy, very kind of almost melodic rock kind of glam metalish, but I kind of dig it. Y&T Down for the Count, kind of same thing. Maybe not the lean and mean Y&T from early in their career, definitely a little more commercial, but still a very good album. Pete Townsend, White City, a novel. Good solo record from him. Alan Parsons Project, Stereotomy. Carnivore, self-titled, another one right on the periphery of my top 28. I know if Count Ralphus is watching, he goes, Pete, that should have been in your top 28. I know, man. Good album. Was big into that back in the day. Icon, Night of the Crime. Second album from them. Really, really melodic. So many potential hits on that album. One of those criminally underground and ignored albums. Blue Oyster Cult, Club Ninja. Way better than I thought back in the day. I used to hate it. I think it's pretty good. White Lion, Fight to Survive. Really good, strong album from them. Spyro Gyra, Alternating Currents. All right, I always have a soft spot for Spyro Gyra. You know, they're more of kind of like a smooth jazz fusion band. That's a really good album from them. Saga Behavior from the Canadians. The Tubes, Love Bomb. Again, very commercial, but still some really good tracks on there. The self-titled debut from The Firm. I like it. Good album. Page and Rogers together, doing some pretty good stuff. You know, you look at those first two albums, you could probably take the best songs from both of those, put them together, and you have a great album. Each one is kind of spotty on their own, but I think there's great songs on both albums. Like I said, put them all together, put the best songs together, you got a dynamite album right there. And then another one that probably should have been on my top 28 somewhere, but you know, you can only fit so many. IQ, The Wake, terrific progressive rock album from these contemporaries of Marillion and whatnot, and Palace and all that. Great, great album. So that's my list, folks. Honorable mentions and my final pick, which was Warning of Danger from Omen. Let us know what you think of Omen and your final pick today down in the comments below and any honorables you might have. And we'll see you tomorrow for pick number 31 of albums that are 30 years old in 2025. We're going to go back to 1995. I'm going to count down and rank my albums this time, right? I'm going to go back to that. You know, doing it for the 70s ones are really hard. I probably could have done it for 85. I just chose not to. But yeah, for 95, I have ranked them all in the order of my preference. So on the first will be pick number 31. Then I'll count down to 30, 29, so on and so forth, and work my way back to number one, which will reveal on the final day of the month. Surprisingly, a lot of really good albums. You know, it's funny, you know, so many people who watch the channel are always down on like 90s music and 2000s music and whatnot, and, you know, kind of stopped listening to much stuff after like the end of the 80s. And, you know, during the 90s, I also was of the opinion that, you know, it's more the popular contemporary stuff, not all that great. But I, you know, was reaching out to a lot of obscure prog and eventually fusion and metal and all that sort of thing. And it's funny now looking back on a year like 1995. Again, you know, you may find many of my picks are just, they're not, you know, household names, but that just goes to show you that, you know, if you think that popular music sucked in the 90s, well, yeah, it kind of did, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't other stuff out there that you know, outside of the mainstream. There was a ton of great stuff. So like I was going through, I mean, I have way more honorable mentions from 1995 than I did from 1985. I mean, and I was amazed at how many great albums. I mean, yeah, I'm looking at my honorables list. It's enormous. How many great albums came out in 1995 from across all different genres that I listen to. I mean, there's tons of like this power metal. There's black and death metal. There's just good hard rock. There's plenty of classic rock stuff. Like I said, plenty of prog. I found tons of prog, blues rock, right? There's just some regular metal stuff. So it's like Maya, Doom, a lot of really cool things. So it was a lot easier than I thought. You know, picking out my top favorites that's always difficult, trying to rank them and stuff like that. But I'm pretty happy with my list, and I think there's a lot of good gems here. So for folks who are looking to maybe discover some new bands and albums, don't sleep on the Daily Show for next month for 1995 albums that are 30 years old in 2025. A lot of really, really cool stuff, and hopefully a lot of you play along and list your picks every day as well. So that's coming up tomorrow, starting tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. A couple hours, well, let's say, well, not a couple hours, in about an hour, we've got Martin Popoff and myself at the Funhouse. So stay tuned for that. We've got the Professor's Picks later on this afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. Jamie Laszlo and the review crew talking about some new releases. We'll see who's on his crew tomorrow. That'll be tomorrow evening, Saturday evening. And then Sunday is ranking the albums, the solo catalog of guitarist and vocalist from Max Webster, Kim Mitchell. I'll be joined by Chad Hutchinson and Eric Porter, both from In the Product Seat. So looking forward to that and more. This is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also down below, we got the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations, our merch page, our Cameo page, and the Sea of Tranquility membership options. All listed down below. Thank you in advance for those of you who do support the channel. It's greatly appreciated, and we'll see you soon here with more stuff. I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching. But don't touch that dial. We'll see you in a little bit for Friday morning at the Funhouse. Take care.